The power of hypnotic embedded commands. So what is true, what is hype, and how can you use embedded commands in all of your marketing to help guide people to make great decisions? Hey, Wayne Sutton here, yourpersuasioncoach.com. Be sure to check us out. I'm the creator and founder of Neuropersuasion, and I want to talk to you today about using embedded commands properly, what they are, how they work, and some of the nonsense that's been taught over the last few years about it. Now, I picked up embedded commands years ago, decades ago, when studying. I was studying under a couple of different NLP trainers, sales coaches, etc., and I recognized they were using these embedded commands. Some were using them great, some were using them kind of silly, and I thought, hey, if there's something to it, then let's really determine what it is. So I jumped outside of the sales arena and jumped back into hypnosis, looked at NLP, timeline therapy, different places where language was being used to create change. And then, of course, my own study in behavioral psychology, temperament therapy, etc., to recognize how language can elicit emotions and then how those emotions help drive basically our actions and reactions. So, looking at embedded commands, I wanted to do a quick video that would share with you some of the misconceptions, because people have taken something that has a lot of potential, and because there was some improper teaching on it or some improper expectations, they've kind of, I think, thrown the baby out with the bathwater. What a crazy phrase. What does that really mean? So let's look at using hypnotic embedded commands the right way. First of all, let's explain the word hypnotic embedded commands. Now, you hear that hypnotic, and all of a sudden, then you start thinking, what does that mean? Am I going to say a certain phrase, a command, and people are going to fall into trance? And listen, hypnotic is a great, powerful frame for it, because you are talking to the unconscious instead of the conscious mind. But if you took the word hypnotic and just laid it aside for a moment, then it's embedded commands. And there's other words, other phrases that people use instead of embedded commands. Why? Because the embedded command may sound too powerful, too manipulative, or maybe because they just want to sound different. But we're going to use the word embedded command, or the phrase embedded command, and we're going to share with you how to use it the right way. Now, first of all, I want you to understand you make decisions. You, me, we all make decisions based upon what? Yep, you've heard it. Emotions. That reptilian brain kicks in, and we instinctually move forward in decisions based upon emotions, based upon patterns of recognition, based upon our past and things that we have experienced in the past. When we hear or see something, we immediately go in and we relate this. How have I heard this before? What does this do? You see something or hear something, and you go back and you look at something in the past, and the brain looks for a pattern. Your unconscious, your mind looks for a pattern to go, this is good or this is not good. Make sense? And then it takes that pattern and it starts relating if you should act, react, flight, or fight. We call them these instinctual decisions, but it's really instinct based upon a pattern that they have seen or heard or recognized. So, if the unconscious mind works in patterns, how can we use patterns to help make great decisions? First of all, I want you to understand what a command is. Let me talk about an embedded command. We're going to talk about using it in our auditory. We're going to talk about the spoken word. Yes, it can be used in text messages. Yes, it can be used inside of copy, whether it's a sales letter, a web page, autoresponder, etc. Yes, embedded commands can be used in that, as well as visual cues. But we're going to talk today just about the auditory, because when you get the auditory down, then you can begin to adapt it to those other areas. Make sense? Okay, great. Now, with our private clients, what we do is we look at what emotion they're trying to attach to themselves or to their product. We're trying to see what emotion are we trying to elicit in our prospect's mind. So then we're going to use embedded commands to help facilitate that, to speed up, to amplify that emotion. Make sense? And then we're going to move that emotion into action steps. Well, we got somebody taking action to do business with us, to move forward to the next step, or whatever that command is. But we're going to get the emotion first, elicited, amplified, attached to you, and then used in embedded commands. Now, so in a command is simply that. It's a command. If you imagine if someone just, since we used the word hypnotic embedded commands, let's go back to hypnosis. If you tell someone, have a seat in this chair, find yourself comfortable, I want you to focus here. In a moment, I'm going to say sleep. But when I say sleep, you're not going to fully fall asleep. You're just going to go into trance. And then you go and you give these, kind of this pattern of a language. And then you look at them and you go on a count of 3. 1, 2, 3, sleep. And the sleep is a command. And what happens when you get the word sleep? You have given them a suggestion of what's going to happen. Like, hey, you're not going to really fall asleep, but here's what's going to happen. You've given them a suggestion of what's going to happen. You've given the command sleep. And as soon as you notice any kind of the physiology change, maybe their eyes close, maybe their head goes down, maybe they exhale, whatever it is, you go, that's right. And you just basically, that's right, go deeper and deeper. What you're doing is you're giving a command. That's what a command is. Now, let's take it outside of the hypnosis for a while. Let's kind of demystify it. If I am in a room full of people, I was recently at a party, a lot of people there, and I heard Wayne, and I immediately turned because I heard my name, right? Our name is something the mind catches. Or if you, let's go back to something even simpler. If you have a child and you tell the child, hey, pick up your plate, take your plate to the kitchen, make up your bed. You have a pet in your home and you go sit, bark, get off the couch, whatever that command is. That command is a simple instruction. It's a directive. Make sense? Okay. So what's an embedded command? The word embedded means hidden or embedded within. So we'll take a long sentence, a paragraph, or multiple paragraphs, and we're going to embed commands. Now, I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to read through them, and I'm actually going to give you some examples straight from our upcoming book. Yes, that's a plug for our book, so be sure to keep an eye out for it. But we'll give you some examples straight from our book of how to, number one, elicit emotion, and then how to take action from that emotion. Are you ready? Let's jump into it. Okay, so I'm going to read directly from my notes that we're writing in our book so you can understand embedded commands. And just going through this, I want you to recognize, I want you to begin to notice how you can apply this in your own business. How you can use this to build your business, okay? So embedded commands are language patterns that bypass the conscious mind to directly affect the subconscious mind. Now, we can get into, and we will with our private clients, how that is used in media, how it's used in politics, how it's used on every news channel. We call overt messaging and then the covert subliminal messaging. So for this video though, we're just going to jump into again how you can begin to see it, begin to use it, and implement it in your business. So these commands are embedded within a larger sentence, causing them to be responded below the level of awareness. You have all heard me say, especially those who work with me, if someone has a conscious awareness of being led, a lot of times the resistance goes up. So we want to reduce resistance and speak into their unconscious, speak into the place where they feel comfortable and help them make great decisions, right? So then we want to help them take action. So the first is we're going to get the mind moving in a certain direction. We're going to get the mind moving in a certain direction, and then we're going to help them guide that direction into where we want to influence. You've heard me say when it comes to rapport, if you meet someone, a stranger, maybe it's a sales call, a sales opportunity, or you're just meeting someone, there can be a different level of emotion. Maybe they're up in fear or anger or disgust or frustration because you called them at a certain time or they were busy. And what we want to do is get them down to a place where they feel good. You know, it's easy to do business with people you like and trust, yes? So how do you get somebody from that place of maybe frustration to a place of trust and like. Well, you use in our rapport training, we talk about the certain statements and questions that we can use to get that person opened up and talking, because when a person hears their own voice, they become more comfortable. The more they talk, the more they guide themselves, and at least from a place of maybe frustration to a place of neutral, and then to know, like, and trust. Are you with me? So, same here, we want to keep the resistance low. So, then once we have that emotion, we can help them move into a place of taking action. So what are some of the emotions we're looking for? Hope, anticipation, curiosity, excitement. We want to move them towards an emotion. We want to elicit an emotion that's going to help us. And we use commands, we use statements. We use embedded commands in our statements. We also use embedded commands in questions. We're going to talk about that. Then we can move them into that action step. So let's jump into some of these. Let me first explain how to use an embedded command. An embedded command is going to be used inside of a sentence, and I'm going to give you some examples here, and then we're going to get the person to move, to find to a place of trust, to make a decision, etc. So let's jump into some questions, okay? Here, I'm just going to read the sentence to you quickly as if you were reading it on a piece of paper, and then we're going to use it as a command. But this is not just a question, it's a statement, it's also a question. And I think the fact of having it as a question is powerful because the question gets them thinking. Questions are a great way to elicit. So here's the statement, or here's the question just spoken as you read it. What would it be like to be really excited about making a living on the internet? If you're trying to sell maybe e-commerce, or you're helping somebody build their own home-based business. Okay? So again, what would it be like to get really excited about making a living on the internet? Simple. But if you'll put a slight pause in there, change your tonality. See, what's the unconscious listening for? The unconscious is listening for something that is different. When the pattern of normal speech, normal talk shifts, and there's a pause, the unconscious says, why are we pausing here? Now again, this is done on an unconscious level. Then there's a shift in tonality, almost a command. That's why it's called a command. I don't tell my, let's look at my dog, our family dog. I don't go, sit, with an uptone and inflection, like I'm asking, sit, and go, no, sit. It's the command. Your tonality goes down, or at least stays neutral. It doesn't go up, so sit. And it's a command. So, let's go back to let me just read it again. What would it be like to get really excited about making a living on the internet? Now, what about this? What would it be like to get really excited about making money and making a living on the internet? What would it be like to get really excited about making a living on the internet? If you heard there, after word to, T-O, I paused, I gave the command, get really excited. And then another slight pause, and then went back into the sentence about making a living on the internet. Now, even if you just asked a question, and you can begin with a softener, like, I'm curious. Again, lower resistance. Hey, I'm curious. What would it be like? I'm curious, okay? That's where we want to come in. We want to start with a curious. I'm curious. What would it be like to get really excited? That's a good question, right? But when you add in the embedded command, I'm curious, what would it be like to get really excited about making a living on the internet? Now you've not only given the command to get excited, you've also asked a question. So in the question, they have to go in and they have to look for that. They have to go in and do a search. What would it feel like? I'm curious, what would it feel like to get really, what would it feel like? They have to think, what would it feel like? You're talking emotion. You're talking the language of emotion. See, what would it be like is good. What would it feel like? So we're changing one word in there, okay? I'm curious, softener, what would it feel like to get really excited about making a living on the internet? Okay, I want to run that through one more time. When you start to feel curious, what do you do about it? When you start to feel curious about something, okay, but I want to say something there. We want to just put our word in there. So, Mr. Prospect, when you start to feel curious, what do you do about it? Do you do more research, and you give them options? that you're leading them into. But when you ask the question and then you give the command, feel curious, I wonder how quickly you'll feel the anticipation of blank. How surprised would you be to feel good about all of the obvious benefits? To feel good. Feel good as that. As you read this brochure, I invite you to notice how you become really interested in all of the ways that you can earn income using our system. So this is just low level, guys. When it comes to embedded commands, I'm actually going to we're going to go through some examples here, some more statements that you can see, and I'm going to put them up on the screen so you can see how it's done. But I want to talk to you about using embedded commands. But if you just try to throw out embedded commands, I've seen too many people do that, and they go, oh, that doesn't work, it sounds silly. It's because you haven't used embedded commands properly in a way to elicit emotion and then lead someone. And again, even if you do not use the elicitation questions, hear me, embedded commands work, but when you use it with the questions and statements that elicit, it's just amplified. So now, when you've got your prospect from this place of fear into a place of neutral or positive, they're expecting, they're curious, whatever it is that you're trying to elicit, then it's time to go and do deeper commands that guide people, such as trust me, decide now, buy now, buy in, whatever it may be, agree with me, buy today, read each word, change your life. Are you with me? So a person could decide to buy now because of all the obvious benefits. A person could, by and large, and you go and talk further on that. Are you with me? Now, when you're using embedded commands, you need to recognize if you just pepper one or two in, it's probably going to have no effect. In fact, what I normally find is most people are so, especially in the beginning stages, they're so concerned about peppering in one or two embedded commands that, as you look at this, you may make the decision to buy now, that they really kind of lose the flow of the conversation. It's not good. What you need to do is have questions that you're going to ask in the discovery stage. You need to have statements and questions during your pitch or your presentation. And it needs to be conversational. It needs to be very conversational. And so then you can embed commands as you're having normal conversation. That way, when somebody recognizes that they feel comfortable with you, then you can feel comfortable also in giving that conversation. Now, if you notice what I did there, and I don't know if you noticed it or maybe you haven't noticed it yet, but I gave a couple of simple commands there. But what I do is when I have a presentation, I'm going to have literally 2 or 3 or 4 paragraphs of things that I'm going to talk about. If I'm talking about your persuasion coach and our coaching program, then I'm going to have 3 or 4 pillars of information that we're going to talk about, and in each of those I'm going to ask you to feel comfortable with it, but I'm also going to ask you to get excited, and through that asking I'm going to give some statements and questions, and I'm going to use embedded commands that give people that feeling, that elicit that emotion, but it just feels like it's the natural choice to jump on board. Are you with me? This is what you need to do. You need to go through and take your presentation and look where you can use embedded commands to influence and elicit certain thought process, elicit the emotions, and then use those emotions to move forward and help people make great decisions. So now I'm going to jump over to the screen, and we're going to share with you some embedded commands, how you can use them in your practice. Last but not least, I want you to go to yourpersuasioncoach.com. Now you can go now or you can go at the end of the video, whichever you feel more comfortable with. I want you to go to Your Persuasion Coach, and there's a button that says Work With Me. Now, understand, please go through that before you hop on a call with me. I'll work with all of my clients one-on-one. So I want to make sure if this is something for you. If you said, Wayne, I want to learn how to influence people, I want to learn how to move people emotionally, and I want to learn how to move people to work with me, then that's what we're here for. So jump over to yourpersuasioncoach.com. Now, or at the end of the video, let's jump into our screen share and let me show you some embedded commands that you can begin to use in your business today. Okay, so we're going to go through not only how to embed commands, as we did. I think one of the most important parts of embedding command is the sentence structure that leads to a command. So some of these are going to be statements, some of these are going to be questions, and remember, simply inserting the command isn't enough. You want to change the tonality, you want to have a slight pause, you want to mark it off. You want to mark each command. Okay, so I'm just going to read through some of these. If you're watching this, you can definitely scroll through and copy all of these. You'll find ones that feel more comfortable to you. You'll find ones that maybe don't feel that comfortable in the beginning, but the more you use them, the more comfortable they'll become. So number one, so these have different structures because some of these are what we'll call mind reading. Some of these are cause and effect. Some of so I don't want to go through all of the linguistical meaning of each phrase. We'll go through that in our private coaching. But I want you to just recognize how an embedded command can work here. So number one, as you probably already know. Now, as you probably already know, I will take just a second here and speak on this. That's a very powerful word or very powerful phrase because, as you probably already know, is an assumptive phrase that they believe the way you believe or they already know something you know. As you probably already know, then you can go into your command. Make sense? Or this also is a great entry point into one of the other embedded commands. Number two, I wouldn't tell you to get excited. I wouldn't tell you to find yourself excited because, and what you're doing there is, I wouldn't tell you is using negation. If I tell someone, and do not think, even as you're listening to or watching this video, even now, I don't want you to think of a American flag flying in the wind, flapping. I don't want you to think of the red, the white, and the blue. I don't want you to think of that. Well, you can't help but think of it. Even though I said I don't want you to, I wouldn't tell you to think of that. The negation, the brain overrides that because it has to see the picture. So I wouldn't tell you to jump on board. I wouldn't tell you to get excited. I wouldn't tell you to trust the process. Because I want you, and then you go into the because. The because is logic. Okay, you've already elicited, you've already implanted the command. Now you're using logic. I wouldn't tell you to trust me completely because I want you to see the case studies first. Make sense? You may find yourself excited. You may become aware. Okay, so number four, some people. Some people is very powerful because when you reference some people, especially in the command or just in this language pattern, some people relates to their own life. They'll place themselves in that. Now, number five is you're using a third-party story, a third-party validation. Robert from the accounting department said, this is the one. Because he did the research. It makes sense using a third-party validation. Tony Robbins recently wrote in an article, this coaching is the most effective. Now, that's not really a command, but you can see here it was a third-party story of what you want people to see. One might, find yourself excited. A person may not know if this is the one until they take a look at everything else. Okay. So I'm wondering if you'll find yourself excited or not. That's a very low pressure. Hey, I'm wondering if you'll find yourself excited as me or not. Find yourself excited being the command. And I'm just going to scroll down. I'm not going to go through all of these. I can tell you that. But maybe you haven't found yourself excited yet. This is very powerful. The word yet is extremely powerful because it presupposes something that will happen. So when you use the word yet, and use it sparingly, use it conversationally, but the word yet is very powerful. If you tell someone, maybe you haven't decided, maybe you haven't come to the conclusion, or maybe you haven't decided this is for you. That's not the best command. Just go with me. Yet. So Yet doesn't have to be. Understand, yet doesn't have to be yet, like you haven't done it yet. Yet with a comma. Maybe you haven't made the decision to jump on board. Maybe you haven't made the decision to jump on board yet. I will say this. So you're using yet as a new sentence, as a new place, but unconsciously they're hearing, maybe you haven't decided to jump on board yet. I will share with you. Yet I will share with you. Or yet I want to show you. Yet once you see. So the yet jumps into the embedded command. It's easy to understand. It's easy to understand this, is it not? Tag question. As soon as they go, yeah, it's not, yeah, you're right. Then the command, in fact, let's take a minute on this one. It's easy to see the obvious benefits, is it not? And as soon as they shake their head, and now if I was saying this to somebody, I would be moving my head up and down. It's easy to see the benefits, is it not? And when they shake their head up and down, they are affirming that statement, and it's easy to see the benefits. Okay. Another one here that's really, really neat is sooner or later. I love this one because, again, I can't go through all of these. This is another lesson altogether, but it's a reference of time. Sooner or later, and you can use this in a sentence. You can use it in a sentence. You can use this in a statement or a question. I'm sorry, a statement or a question. But in a statement, it could be, sooner or later, most people discover this is the one. Because sooner or later, most people, by and large, our product. Sooner or later, most people, sooner or later. You're saying either now or later. It's okay. So I invite you to go through and look at these. Hit the pause button. And there's binds, double binds. There's so much in here that I want you to go through. And one may, and this is, see this, I got a double comma there. This is a place where you can insert their name. One may, Wayne enjoyed the benefits because one may, well, it doesn't mean you mean somebody, but then you insert their name. One may, Wayne enjoyed the benefits. And you give the command. I don't know if you blank then what happens when you, all of these, each one of these have different structures of influence outside of commands. Okay, there's cause and effect, there's binds and double binds, there's time reading. I'm gonna read this really quick through this. When you presupposes the person is going to do the thing or experience the state you describe. So it's no longer open to debate or doubt. Okay. When you feel incredibly loving, command, right? When you feel incredibly loving, do you find yourself compelled to act on it? So this and this could be the command. When you find yourself incredibly loving, or when you feel incredibly loving, do you find yourself compelled to act on it? It's a question, right? It's a simple question. But in the question, you're pulling up, eliciting the feelings of incredibly loving, and you're also using it as a statement. What would it be like? What would it be like? Weasel phrase actually comes from the advertising industry. And we'll get into that when we do copywriting and we do more marketing in print. What would it be like if you were to feel incredibly loving? So again, feel incredibly loving, okay? Feel incredibly loving, or feel incredibly excited, or find yourself excited. Find yourself, let's talk about that for a minute. I use that a lot. So let's just change this word real quick. Find yourself excited. See, if somebody finds themselves, have you ever found yourself really hungry? Have you ever found yourself really just emotional? Have you found yourself really excited about something? When you find yourself, it's not that you have to do it. So that's the power of this language pattern. It's not something you have to do. You simply just recognize it. What would it be like if you were to find yourself excited? Find yourself excited is the command. what would it be like? They have to go in and do a search of their own consciousness and their unconscious. A person can, if you were to, and there is again the second command, act on it, if you were to. As you find yourself, as you feel incredibly loving, can you feel how excited you're getting? Okay, now, it's not necessary to. We're going to do this one, then we're going to cut. I'm not going to go through all of these today, but using negation, again, we talked about, it's not necessary to find yourself impressed. You're trying to impress someone with your product or your service. It's not necessary to find yourself impressed. And this would be a good place to put their name. It's not necessary to find yourself impressed, Wayne. As you listen carefully to what I say, I will cover all of the details. Are you with me? That is the power. So this is just, again, here's 58 different statements. If you want to hit the pause button, write them down. It would be great to go through. And there's more, but I don't want to get into all of them today. There's a lot more that we can go into. But this will give you an understanding of embedded commands, how to begin to implement them every day. And it will also help you recognize the power of embedded commands, and more importantly, or as important, the power of conscious and unconscious languaging. So, go back, go through, hit the pause button, write these down, and begin to practice. Now, how did I learn this 2 decades ago? I took one at a time. And this one here, third-party stories, I looked for third-party stories where people said something. I Googled it. I found third-party stories, and I used that as validation to create metaphorical stories where I can embed commands. So much more we can cover on this, guys. But again, there's 58 of them, and there's more for our private coaching clients. So let's get busy. Okay, are you beginning to see how you can use these in your business? Are you beginning to fully understand how powerful unconscious language is? YourPersuasionCoach.com. Jump on a call with me. I look forward to hearing from you.